See, the Congressman Brad Sherman of California.
Picking up on what the gentleman from Georgia said, I think he's entitled to answers if they can't be provided publicly. Mr. Schiffer, will you give him or the full subcommittee a classified briefing answering his questions?
Certainly be happy to come up and talk to the committee. I can assure you that we have been able to provide Mr. Sopko and his
We have several skiffs right in this building.
Yeah, no, we have been able to provide him with responses to all of the questions.
Good. We're reclaiming my time. I've got to let it. We went to Afghanistan to get bin Laden. We got him. We would have gotten him sooner if we hadn't focused too much on Iraq. We are prepared to take whatever military action is necessary in Afghanistan to prevent it from being a source of a mass casualty attack on the United States. So far, the various forces in Afghanistan seem to be more focused on killing each other. We went to Afghanistan for a second reason, one we never voted on, and that was to seek to remake Afghanistan society. Historians will have to tell us whether that was ever possible to do. Clearly, we failed to do it. We then had a President Trump who promised the American people that we'd get out of what he classified as a forever war. He was clever in that he gave the promise of the withdrawal before the election, intending to do the withdrawal after the election, because there's no such thing as an orderly withdrawal under those circumstances. We did not have an orderly withdrawal from Saigon. Our military complex told us we'd have an orderly withdrawal because they believed that since the Afghan army could fight the Taliban successfully for 3 to 6 months, that they would, which is absurd to think that the average grunt in the Afghan army is going to lay down his life while the leaders of the country and those most connected to the United States are trying desperately to leave Afghanistan. So, of course, there was a disorderly withdrawal, and then we have the attacks from the other side saying somehow we should have gone through Afghanistan, an enormous country, and taken our weapons back from the people who wanted to continue holding them, but do it all with no American casualties. So we left. We now have, and one have failed to acknowledge, that we have very limited power at all. We care more about the Afghan people and the Taliban, certainly the half of the Afghan people who are women. We can threaten to cut off aid. The Taliban may not care at all. We could bomb Taliban military targets, but I think that's absurd. The United States is not in a mood to do that. We are told that we're going to make them a pariah in the international community, but they've got no reason or little reason to care. And China and Russia is certainly part of the international community, and they'll be very happy to do business with the Taliban. We have seen our aid interrupted because, or might be interrupted because we know it's being stolen. I'll point to Tigray, where our aid was being stolen by criminals. And we didn't like to see that. We interrupted. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people died because we didn't want to see our aid stolen. I'm much more concerned about our aid being stolen by terrorists than stolen by economically driven criminals. We have it's commented that we should somehow prevent Taliban officers from visiting Russia and China. Gee, I don't know how we're supposed to do that. We'd like to believe that the Afghan people share our values, and certainly those Afghans we talk to tend to share our values. But the fact is that in over 20 years and with all the money that any Afghan could ever imagine on one side and the ideology of the Taliban on the other, we lost. We are told that we have a moral obligation to the Afghan people. I think we have a moral obligation to everyone in the entire world. But the idea of taking the most generous country in the world, the country who's sent its men and women to die by the thousands to help other countries, has some sort of guilt for its involvement in Afghanistan, from which it derives a moral obligation of the Afghan people greater than that of China or Norway, I think is simply wrong. When we went into Afghanistan, things were terrible, and they had a civil war, and the 90% of Afghanistan women who were under the Taliban were as repressed then as they are now. We didn't break Afghanistan. It was broken when we got there. Now, the Afghan government is seeing hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions of people deported from Pakistan. It has fought a little border skirmish with Iran over water. How does Afghanistan get along with its neighbors?
Thank you for that question. You know, the relationship between Pakistan and the Taliban at the moment is it's not good. The Pakistanis are extremely worried, as they've made clear publicly, about this sharp increase in attacks against their security forces. Just in recent days, there have been senior members of the Taliban that have visited Islamabad and seen senior leadership. You know, I don't have great insight into whether that's a reflection of perhaps actions by the Taliban to crack down on TTP, but this security issue is, I think, dominating the Taliban's relationship with Pakistan, Pakistan's relationship with one of its neighbors. To the north, I'll give you just one example of Uzbekistan. Among the difficult issues that Uzbekistan has in its relationship with the Taliban is over a particular canal that the Taliban are seeking to build in the north that could divert large percentages of the Amu Darya River that supports tens of thousands of Uzbeks as well as Turkmen. So that's one issue. At the same time, the Uzbeks are generously providing electricity that supports the Afghan people. And so is even Tajikistan. And Tajikistan itself, I think, within the region has the most concerns about Taliban activity inside Afghanistan. On Iran, again, you know, the Iranians, like every other country in the region, they have an embassy in Kabul. They have a special envoy. And they probably have steep security concerns as well, particularly in the aftermath of this attack.
Do they fault the Taliban for not controlling anti-Shiite mass murders like those we saw explode a bomb just a few days ago in Iran?
Yes, I think they probably have concerns about, look, I don't want to talk for Iran, but any country that's attacked, I think they would have concerns about the ability of a neighbor to take action to ensure those attacks don't happen.
I've gone way over. I yield back.